Good morning. I'm Bart Schellenhammer, and on behalf of the Londonderry Volunteer Fire Company and the Londonderry Township Supervisors, I welcome you.
Don't lean on that, it's going down.
Okay. I welcome you to the community. In a moment, I'm going to turn things over to the leaders of the Nuclear Energy Caucus who have some important information to share. I want to first take a moment to explain what's on the line, not just in our community here in Londonderry Township, but communities all across Pennsylvania. It's why so many employees from those plants and so many union members have traveled to be with us today. Jobs are on the line, families are on the line, schools are on the line, and yes, fire companies like us are on the line. Over the last dozen or so years, TMI has partnered with us to organize a golf tournament that has raised more than $650,000. Critical funds that have allowed us to renovate the building we are all standing in today. It simply would not have happened without the support of TMI. The people of TMI have been amazing. Their friends, their neighbors, and so much a part of why we are able to protect local homes and businesses. Our community and communities like ours in other parts of Pennsylvania cannot afford to lose these nuclear plants. That's why we're so grateful to the members of the Nuclear Energy Caucus who have been looking closely at the issue. So enough of me. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Ryan Aument from neighboring Lancaster County to explain why we're all here today. Senator?
Thank you and good morning. This crowd is phenomenal. Thank you to all of those who have joined us here this morning. My special thanks to Londonderry Township, Londonderry Volunteer Fire Company for hosting us here today. Thank you to Chief Schellenhammer for your words and for your leadership. I also want to express my thanks to the Dauphin County Commissioners for your leadership, your service. We'll hear from Commissioner Mike Prees shortly. Thank you for your leadership, for being here. I want to acknowledge the members of the General Assembly who are in attendance. This is always a challenge when you're asked to do this in a crowd this size, that you may miss someone, so I apologize in advance if I did. Representative Becky Corbin, who has been a co-chair of this caucus, and you'll hear from Becky shortly. We thank her for her leadership. Representative Tom Mehaffie is here. Tom has been a real leader in the General Assembly on this issue, has been engaged throughout the process, and I appreciate his service, his leadership. Pleased that Representative Jim Marshall has made the trip all the way in from Beaver County. This has been an issue of real importance to him, and he's just been an outstanding voice on the Nuclear Energy Caucus as well. And grateful that our local legislators, Representative David Hickernell, my colleague from Lancaster County, is here. And Senator Mike Fulmer, if he's not here yet, he will be. He called to say that he was on the way, and I'm grateful for their advocacy and for their engagement with the Nuclear Energy Caucus. I want to express my gratitude to the not just the members of the Nuclear Energy Caucus, but to the co-chairs. I've already mentioned Representative Corbin, but Senator John Udicek and Representative Rob Matzey. It's just been a pleasure to serve with them. They have been just been an outstanding leadership team for this caucus. The Nuclear Energy Caucus was formed 2 years ago, a bipartisan, bicameral, informal caucus. Not just the very first of its kind in Pennsylvania, but the very first of its kind in the United States. This caucus has over 75 members, and to date has held numerous educational meetings, hearings, and tours of our Commonwealth's nuclear facilities. The guiding principles of the Nuclear Energy Caucus have been to promote nuclear energy as a clean, safe, reliable, and affordable source of electricity to power Pennsylvania's economy and achieve our environmental goals. 2, to advocate for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to recognize nuclear energy's zero carbon emission attributes similar to other zero-carbon technologies. Third, to promote and seek to preserve the positive contributions the nuclear industry provides to the Commonwealth's economy through employment at the nuclear plants, indirect employment through vendors and contracted labor, civic and philanthropic engagement, and taxes paid by the industry's workforce and business. As many of you know, Pennsylvania is the second largest nuclear capacity state in the United States. Here we have 9 nuclear reactors and 5 nuclear power plants. 42% of the Commonwealth's total electricity production and just over 93% of Pennsylvania's zero-emission energy is the result of the nuclear energy industry here in Pennsylvania. The nuclear industry supports 16,000 jobs and directly employs 4,200. However, we have reached a critical moment for Pennsylvania's nuclear energy industry. And absent government action, 2 of Pennsylvania's 5 nuclear power plants will prematurely shut down starting next year because of an inability to compete in today's energy market. Once this process begins, it is irreversible. The report we released today outlines clearly the devastating consequences that will result from the premature closing of Pennsylvania's nuclear energy facilities. Devastating consequences to our economy, fuel diversity, Pennsylvania's consumers, reliability, security, and resiliency of the electrical grid, overall national security interest, and most certainly, our environment. Additionally, this report discusses in detail the state of and flaws in the current energy market. Most significantly, the current determining factor, the exclusive factor for whether or not a plant remains open, is short-term marginal cost. In other words, we make long-term energy policy decisions based only on what is cheap today. This short-sighted approach ignores the many important benefits each resource brings to the market and other important public policy goals that states may have. For our nuclear assets, the consequences of this, again, are irreversible. Finally, the report we released today outlines options in detail for the Pennsylvania General Assembly to consider. 1, the General Assembly could opt to defend the status quo and do nothing. This is an option. But this is an option that would leave Pennsylvania's clean energy resources, including its nuclear plants, on a trajectory to early retirement. 2, Pennsylvania could modify current Alternative Energy Portfolio Standards, or AEPS, and establish zero-emission credit program to place nuclear generation on equal footing with other zero-emission electric generation resources in Pennsylvania. 3rd, Pennsylvania could opt to modify AEPS or establish a ZEC program in combination with a safety valve mechanism that would allow Pennsylvania to transition to the fixed resource requirements alternative, which appears to be the tool recommended by FERC to allow Pennsylvania a near-term solution for its nuclear fleet, essentially preserving the PJM capacity market while respecting specific state policy choices. 4th, Pennsylvania could establish a carbon fee program, a market-based solution on carbon emissions. And the report outlines that there could be a combination of the third or fourth option with regard to modifying APS and establishing a carbon fee program. In closing, I want to express again my gratitude to all the testifiers, the organizations, advocacy groups, businesses, and industries that have provided their expertise and technical guidance throughout this fact-finding mission. Most importantly, the Nuclear Energy Caucus would like to acknowledge and thank the hardworking men and women who every day go to work in one of the Commonwealth's 5 nuclear stations and who provide such an incredible value to Pennsylvania by safely producing electricity in an environmentally responsible manner to meet our 21st century energy needs. And to the people of Pennsylvania, the caucus would like to thank you for your patience as we've sought to understand what is a very complex but incredibly important issue. Our effort has solely been on your behalf so that you can have economic prosperity, energy security, long-term price stability, clean air, and all the associated benefits that are derived from the highest performing, most reliable form of energy production in our state and in our nation, nuclear energy. Now my privilege to turn over the podium to one of my co-chairs, Representative Becky Corbin. Becky has been a voice, a champion throughout this process, advocating for the environmental benefits of nuclear power. Becky, thank you for your service, thank you for your leadership, and thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Senator Ahmed, and thank you all for being here. It's really invigorating. Aside from the cold, it's invigorating to see so many people, like-minded people, here in support of our Nuclear Energy Caucus. I'd like to take a moment to discuss what's at stake for Pennsylvania from an environmental standpoint. Because those of us who are concerned about greenhouse gases and climate change, there's a lot riding on how we handle these critical issues related to our nuclear plants. The Nuclear Energy Caucus dedicated one of our hearings to this very issue. And I would urge our colleagues in the legislature to pay close attention to what we learned, particularly in light of the recently released federal government report on climate change. Numerous experts in the Nuclear Energy Caucus testified about the existing nuclear plants that are a critical component of limiting greenhouse gases and nuclear plant closures, how devastating this would be to greenhouse gas goals. In fact, the president of the Pennsylvania Environmental Council said, "We believe that the loss of today's nuclear fleet would be a terrible blow to the progress already made in reducing Pennsylvania's contribution to climate change and would hamstring all of our combined efforts." The reality is this: the shutdown of nuclear plants across the country is a greenhouse gas emergency. Losing the Beaver Valley and 3 Mile Island nuclear plants will negate 5 times the emissions benefit of all of the solar and wind power installed in Pennsylvania to date. What we see rising from the cooling towers of our nuclear plants is not smoke. It's not any kind of harmful emission like so many people think, and I know, I'm a chemist. It's water vapor. Unlike power stations that rely on fossil fuels, our nuclear plants emit 0 greenhouse gases. This we know. Pennsylvania's air quality would be so much worse without nuclear plants, and it would be more difficult for the Commonwealth to comply with federal environmental regulations. Loss of the plants would increase air pollution and may trigger ozone alert days, asthma attacks, lung disease, hospital visits, and loss of work from poor air quality. And we know that high pollution days disproportionately impact urban and suburban residents. Next, we will hear from local officials and labor leaders about the jobs and economic impacts that we should lose if should we lose these nuclear assets. And that's a critical component of why we must act. But let's not underestimate the environmental consequences of taking electricity generated by nuclear off the grid. In every instance across the country, when a nuclear plant goes offline, the air in that region becomes less healthy to breathe. That's something that should trouble anyone. I'd like now to invite Dauphin County Commissioner Mike Priest to say a few words. Commissioner Priest is the co-chair of the Clean Jobs for Pennsylvania Coalition and has been a tremendous supporter of our Nuclear Energy Caucus, and I'd like to thank him.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. This is not just about the here and now, it's about the future. And the future revolves around things like young Alexander here and his father and their current job here in the area and what it means for the future, not just for him, but for this great nation of ours. Thank you. Yes, sir. You may all be wondering why we are standing here in the Londonderry Firehouse today to do this press conference instead of at the state capitol. It's for one important reason. Too often, discussions are had and decisions are made in the halls of the Capitol without ever actually seeing the people and the communities that are impacted directly by those decisions. This location was chosen to show everyone the importance of what's happening today and what's happening now. Whether or not these plants are kept open is a much bigger issue than anything discussed in a hearing room at the state capitol. With that said, I want to take just a moment to talk about the impacts that will be felt in local communities across the state if our nuclear plants are closed. Let me start with an example. Almost 4 years ago, the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant was closed just south of Brattleboro, Vermont. The severe effects of that closure were felt immediately, and they continue to this day. Over 500 jobs were lost immediately the day the plant closed. Property taxes increased by 20% to account for the loss of tax revenue. A 20% tax increase was needed. The economic downturn in the area started almost immediately as well. Not just the workers, not just the taxes, it affects the entire community. The local pizza shops, the local gas stations, and the local schools. And I was chatting with Anna Dale from Londonderry Township and Kevin Busher from the Lower Dauphin School District earlier about the significant impact it's going to have on the Lower Dauphin School District and Londonderry Township and Dauphin County. $1 million a year in tax revenue could be lost. Since the announcement that 3 Mile Island and Beaver Valley would close, we've heard from the workers of these plants. We've heard from the local elected officials who will be left holding the bag if the plants close. And we've heard from the business owners down to a local pizza shop owner right down the road in Middletown who serves thousands of pizzas a year to 3 Mile Island employees. And make no mistake, this isn't about Exelon. They'll be just fine. This is about the communities and the workers. This is about the loss they will face if these plants close. It's the local economies and families that will be hurt. It's the men and women here with us today, in front of me and behind me, and the children like Alexander, who will suffer the greatest consequences. Let us never forget that. When we launched the Clean Jobs for Pennsylvania in 2017, we told the community we were sounding the alarm, and we did. This year, 2018, we reminded the community the clock is ticking, and it is. With no action in 2019, time's up. Are we going to allow that to happen? No. Are we going to allow that to happen? No. You hear that, Senator? Senator Fulmer, please come up here for a second. You came in after your name was announced. Here's a guy. No, come over here. Senator,
not my fault.
You're part of the team too. You're part of the team too.
What are you going to say?
The reason you couldn't get through the crowd is because there's such a huge crowd here.
Couldn't find a parking spot.
And the impact, you see the impact. It's not just what we're hearing about. You're seeing it right here today, right here, right now. And I want to thank you and Senator Allman and the state representatives here today for your leadership, and good luck moving forward and getting this done on behalf of everyone here.
Thank
you, sir. So today's report shows what we've known all along. The seriousness of this situation cannot be any higher, and the time sensitivity, quite frankly, cannot be any more urgent. It's time for the legislature to act, and the time to act is now. We thank the members of the Nuclear Energy Caucus for their leadership, and we hope that their colleagues will follow their lead to a solution. It's long past time to find a way to properly value all that nuclear energy provides to our communities and our great Commonwealth. And at this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to my personal friend and fellow co-chair of the Clean Jobs for Pennsylvania Coalition, the president of the Central Pennsylvania Building and Construction Trades, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Gussler.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Mike. Like many of the men and women that are here today who work inside Pennsylvania's nuclear plants, this is a very personal issue for me. I was raised off wages earned at 3 Mile Island. My dad worked at TMI during construction of the plant and remained there once the plant was operating. On behalf of all of organized labor in the state of Pennsylvania, I want to thank the leaders of the Nuclear Caucus for providing a roadmap forward with possible solutions that would prevent devastating job losses if our nuclear plants shut down. These plants employ thousands of building trades members who are highly skilled, and they have done this for decades. In total, the nuclear industry supports 16,000 jobs in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and these are all good-paying, family-sustaining jobs. If we would go to the legislature and say that we have a plan to bring 16,000 new jobs to Pennsylvania, they would be jumping over each other to see who's going to sponsor that legislation. All we're asking for is that we get a clean shake here. We saw examples of what would happen. Governor Corbett and the legislature worked to secure $1.65 billion in tax credit for companies looking to build a cracker gas plant in Pennsylvania. And just recently, Governor Wolf put on a full court press to try to attract Amazon to the state of PA. This situation should be no different. The creation of new jobs and investments made to bring those jobs to Pennsylvania are meaningless without the same effort being put forward to retaining our current jobs. Now it is up to the state legislature and Governor Wolf to ensure our members continue to have great jobs here in Dauphin County, at Beaver Valley, and the rest of the nuclear plants across Pennsylvania. Their actions over the next few months will truly dictate if we remain the high-skilled and good-paying jobs at the plants. And let me be very clear, if they choose not to act, there will be thousands of families across this Commonwealth asking why they were willing to let these good jobs go. I hope everyone that's here today takes a moment to speak with the workers from these nuclear facilities. Hear their stories. There's no better reminder of what these plants provide than hearing about the work these folks do and the families that are supported across Pennsylvania. Once those jobs are gone, they're gone forever. So I would like to invite Senator Alment back to the mic for closing remarks.
Thank you all very, very much. I appreciate all the comments. This has been an outstanding event, and I want to thank again all those who worked on this report. I am extremely proud of this work product, this report. I'm not aware of many informal caucuses in our state capitol that have produced a work product of this quality, and I'm grateful for all of those who have worked on this. But it's very clear, and we've heard it this morning, that the time for action is now. We have a very narrow window in early 2019, and I'm pleased with the work this caucus has done to elevate a very important conversation, to educate, and I think build momentum for legislative action in 2019. And we are committed to having the conversations with our colleagues, to continuing to educate, presenting the findings of this report to our colleagues, presenting the options to our colleagues, and working towards a solution within the General Assembly and the governor. A number of the reports are available. We've, I think, provided them. I want to mention to the folks from the media that are here, thank you for being here. Thanks for the work that you do. You've played an incredibly important role over the last 2 years, helping to engage the citizenry and to educate. There are reports that are available within your media packets. If you've not received one, Stephanie Buchanan is here somewhere. We can make sure you have a copy. There's a digital version that is live now on my website at senatorahmet.com. If you follow me on Twitter at Senator Ahmet, I'll be making that available. I do all that myself, so you'll have to give me some time, but I'll make that available. We'll make that available shortly to you, but the report is available online now, again, at senatorahmet.com. Again, I want to thank all the participants, including Representative Marshall, Representative Mehaffie, and others will remain here for any questions that folks may have. But again, thank you for being here today, and thank you for the important work you do. Thank you.